Hey, welcome. I'm Shervington Hayes, and it's time for another episode of the Forgiveness Show. And this episode, we'll be wrapping up on the four agreements that we started in the last episode as to a systematic and structured step-by-step way in which you can look at a situation differently by using the four agreements put forward by Don Miguel Ruiz in terms of how you can live a life that is much drama-free. And I like the four agreements because the first principle, if just with that, you can look at a situation differently and be willing to be impeccable with your word. You can get unstuck from a situation in which you might be stuck in. And if you're willing to make the choice to look at the situation differently, you can then make another choice how to move beyond that situation and not be in bondage to the trappings of a rigid or inflexible way of looking at the situation, why there is probably a need for forgiveness and forgiving. So just a quick reminder of the first agreement as put forward in the four agreements. And this is a summary that is done by Brian Johnson, the philosopher's note, and he is summarizing Don Miguel Ruiz, the four agreement. Now, the four agreements, the first agreement says, be impeccable with your word. And Don put forward that the first agreement is the most important one and also the most difficult one to honor. It is so important that when with just this agreement, you will be able to transcend to the level of existence, which Don calls heaven and earth. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. Now, it sounds very simple, I can tell you, but it is one thing to master. As someone who's been practicing some of the principle with some amount of consistency and mastery for more than 10 years, I am still not at a place where I have mastered and it's consistent always in terms of being able to use the four agreements. Now, if we jump to a summary of some of the quotes and some of the things that was put forward in Don's book on not taking it personal or being impeccable with your word, we'll see that one of the things that he is putting forward is that being impeccable with our word, this one is big. First, let's look at how Louise defined the word impeccability. Impeccable means without sin. Impeccable comes from the Latin peccabus, which means sin. In impeccable means without. So impeccable means without sin. When we use the words that is against us and not in keeping with who we are as a whole and complete person having a human experience, we are sinning against ourselves by going against ourselves with our own words. Everything you feel or believe or say that goes against yourself is a sin. You go against yourself when you judge or blame yourself for anything. Being without sin is exactly the opposite. Being impeccable is not going against yourself. When you're impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you do not judge or blame yourself. Now, this might be tricky to just on the first go gets the impact of what Don is putting forward here. But if you practice it and you meditate on it and you come to believe it to be your truth and you live by this standard where you say what you mean and you mean what you say and you do what you say you're going to do. And if you can't, you renegotiate. There's nothing there that says if you say something that you can go back and renegotiate with new information that might have come to the fore. Now, while we're on the subject of sin, do you know that according to Wikipedia, in the biblical Hebrew, the generic word for sin is heth. It means to err, to miss the mark. it does not mean to do evil. I just thought I'd put that in as put forward by Brian Johnson from the Philosopher's Note. Now, the second agreement, don't take anything personally. Whatever happens around you, don't take it personally. That is easier said than done. We've been socialized to take everything personally. We've been socialized to see and to believe that everything is always about us. So not taking things personally as an agreement, it's going to be a tough one. First, there is be impeccable with your word, mean what you say and do what you say, and don't sin against yourself. Don't use your word against you. Take responsibility for your actions, but don't judge yourself or blame yourself. These are tough positions or agreements to make with yourself and then to work with others. But I can tell you, there is merit to it. And if you're going to look at things differently, to forgive yourself and forgive others, and to make a choice to move beyond as an empowered person with a choice that you may have no control over the current situation or something that has happened, but you have a choice how you're going to choose to move beyond the situation and not be in bondage to the things about the situation. It will take some impeccability with the word. It will take some amount of not taking it personal. And then the third agreement, don't make assumptions. So it gets deeper, I see. Impeccability with the word, don't take it personally, and now don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they're true. We could swear they're real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking, and then we take it personally. Then we blame them and react by sending emotional poison towards them with our words. But to add a little bit to what Don is saying here, this is me putting this in with the whole reason why we forgive. To send emotional poison or to have a negative thought to another person, you are the container from which it emanates. And if it is poisonous, negative, who first gets contaminated? You. Me. And that's why we want to be impeccable with our word. That's why we will want to not take it personally. And that's why we want to not make assumptions. Because whatever it is, that energy, that thing that is going to be sent towards the other person, if it's coming from you, it emanates from you, and you're the first one to be contaminated by it. Let's just take that for a starter. And maybe that's the reason why you want to start with practicing forgiveness, by looking at the situation differently. And then finally, do your best. The fourth agreement, always do. There is just one more agreement here, but this one more agreement allows the other three to become deeply ingrained habits. The fourth agreement is about the actions of the first three agreements. Always do your best in trying to be impeccable with your word, in not taking it personally, and in doing your very best. And if you do that, then you've accomplished the fourth agreement. And the thing about this, I want to caution in trying to use this for the process of forgiveness, is not about mastering or getting all four of them bang on and now you become an angel with wings and you're flying. That is not why I'm putting this forward. I'm putting this forward so it makes it easier for you to make that choice to empower yourself, to let go and get unstuck from situations that you're in bondage to, that you've made a vested interest in holding on to, and then you're stuck, and then you're miserable, and then you're depressed. But it will take some amount of responsibility. So in our next episode, we will deal with neurosis and responsibility of character or character disorder with regards to responsibility. Namaste. Shalom. Hotep. Bye for now. I'm Shervington Hannes, and you can get more information through changeclinic.org.